Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to a new video. We have a video of Totally Not Mark today. Would Dragon Ball Daima be more successful if they had never turned the cast into children? Uh, I mean, you gotta be an idiot to say no to that question, right? Because obviously we're at a point to where like Dragon Ball's appeal to a younger audience, at least in America, is basically mute. Majority of your audience is going to be like teenagers and up probably. So turning them into kids is not really a necessary thing. So we have modern Dragon Ball's biggest mistake, according to Totally Not Mark. So let's see if we agree.
Have been more successful if they had never turned the cast into children? This is a question I've come to ask myself a lot as of late. Since Daima's first trailer back in 2023, the general impression amongst the masses in response has been a little.
Wait, what? I have never seen a series be
I will say that it's completely unreasonable to just write off the show because of the premise that they're kids again. Because, yeah, it's just not. When it comes to quality Dragon Ball content, it's literally right up there with the movies. And I would argue it's better than Super. I would say Super has better moments, but as an overall show, Super's fucking terrible. Super's in my top 10 like worst animes of all time, and it's not even like it's not for the fact that it's worse than a lot of the really bad shows, quote unquote, but it's worse in the fact that it's a Dragon Ball show that was so insanely mismanaged that it's just not even I literally I do not rewatch Super. I will rewatch small moments like the Vegito versus Zamasu fight, or I'll rewatch the Goku versus Kefla fight. That's it. I will rewatch moments. I will not rewatch like fucking Dragon Ball Z. I'll rewatch the whole fucking show. I don't give a fuck. Now I'll skip filler, but I'll rewatch the whole show. Super, I can't. I can't sit through that fucking absolute cringe fest of a show. It's just terrible. It's so bad. Daima is like the things that we as Dragon Ball fans want. Perfect animation. We want high, high attention to the story. There is a reason why Daima has so many quote unquote retcons. These retcons exist because we have to fix things that Toriyama never remembered. R.I.P. Big Tori, but I'm not going to say he's a perfect mangaka because he's not. He forgot a lot of things, left a lot of holes. Daima's patching said holes and expanding upon them to make a greater universe. I'm not trying to say if that really turns you away, like them turning into kids turns you away from the show that bad, it's really not like worth my time trying to fight you on it. If it's just not your thing, it's not your thing. But as long as you give it an honest chance, then great.
so consistently disappointing.
Nobody asked for this!
Now, obviously, not everyone had this reaction. A lot of people were excited, myself included,
True.
but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dragon Ball Daima didn't receive a sizable amount of pushback due to this creative choice. A pushback that certainly couldn't have helped the series find the momentum that it has sorely needed. With only a few episodes now remaining, despite all the polish and story oversight, Dragon Ball Daima has not quite managed to capture the same mass appeal many fans had started to take for granted from the IP. On the channel, we've already explored the reasons behind Daima's virtually non-existent marketing campaign, but today I want to see what the show.
One thing I will say is I'm glad we are not having such a marketing push because that's another reason why Super was fucking terrible. That's why we have Super Saiyan Rage Trunks, arguably the worst form in Dragon Ball, because there's no reason for its existence except to sell Trunks toys. and it's so blatantly obvious, and it's so fucking annoying. So I'm glad we're dialing back to marketing because you have so many shows that don't need to market. Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't need to market because it's so fucking good. Okay. Demon Slayer, same way. Very good show, doesn't need to market because it's just good. And that inherently makes it popular, right? One Piece is still cooking. They're still not having to market because everybody's just hanging like tooth and nail waiting for that fucking next One Piece episode, you know? So this is what I'm talking about with like the quality of the show will generally do the marketing for you because it'll be the most talked about thing that's going around. And a lot of the times, even when Dragon Ball has been bad, it's been the most talked about thing. So with that in mind, the only thing you have to do is just make it good. Because everybody's still gonna talk about it, good or bad. People are still gonna talk about Dragon Ball. So yeah, might as well just make it good.
could have looked like had they not been transformed into children in the first place. Will it work better, or did this creative choice play more of a role than we initially thought? Whatever the case may be, myself and my team are taking some of the best shots from the series and redrawing them completely as adults.
Might be pretty fun. I ain't gonna lie. But yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, obviously turning them into kids is not the best choice. Because I would say that kids are not even the target audience for Dragon Ball anymore. I don't know if that's the case in Japan, but here in America, majority of kids don't even know what the fuck Dragon Ball is. So
And kicking things off will be the one and
actually, no, that's a lie. They do know what Dragon Ball is, but they only know what Dragon Ball is because they play as the characters in Fortnite. That's it.
only Trev. Episode 6 of Daima was the first major action set piece for the show, so where better to start than right here? Fitting also as it offers the perfect opportunity to explore the pros and the cons of the choice to age the cast down. Goku's always been
Also, from a narrative perspective, you have to do this. Well, I shouldn't say you have to, but you have to nerf the cast because we even see like in this world, in this timeline, I guess, this setup, that even Bulma is struggling. And Bulma's normally the plot device, but we've seen that plot device be taken away from Bulma due to the fact that she's not the adult super genius that we're used to. So you have to do this because otherwise there's no real draw to you even wanting to see where the story's going to go because you already know that Goku is on a whole new level. You know that Vegeta is now on a whole new level. Like most Dragon Ball fans, they don't just watch the show, they keep up with the manga. So we know how strong these guys are. And if they aren't nerfed, well then any sort of stakes or draw to the series completely fizzles out. Fizzles out. Because if you're about to tell me that Majin Buu is gonna hang off with fucking Ultra Instinct Goku, yeah, you can fucking eat shit with that bullshit logic, okay? So you have to nerf them some way, somehow. Honestly, I think turning them into kids, the least offensive way to do it. The least offensive way to do it. Because if there were some sort of like demon magic that was strong enough to nerf them down while maintaining their adult forms, it's just like why why wouldn't there be other types of demonic magic that could just make a fighter that could beat them? And another thing is that this is a nice soft-hearted way to fix a lot of the holes that were left by Toriyama so that when we do get a new series because they will bring back a Dragon Ball Super, if you will. Um, but this time, you know, it'll be going over the current arcs that we know of. So yeah, it's a good soft-hearted kind of tide you over show that isn't gonna waste a bunch of budget on their end. And we still get like super cool moments. We get that Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta look that was so sick, paying homage to old Tori at the end there.
The man, even when he was a kid. And this episode is no different. He walks up to Glorio, gently whispers into his ear, "Hey, Gorillo, I'm him," before proceeding to clap his cheeks in the most embarrassing way possible. But why does this scene work, and would it be better served if he were an adult? Well, Goku's always sort of been on the goofy and innocent side of things. But as any seasoned fan of Dragon Ball will tell you, he has always rocked that aura. And no, I am not talking
True.
about the white swooshies around his body. Throughout the Frieza, Cell, Boo, and whatever arcs, Goku has been able to stand on business when he's pushed to it. Sometimes to devastating effect. And when he is an adult man, that aura is much more intimidating. However, when he's a kid, that aura is still present. It's just got a different flavor to it.
I would argue that Kid Goku has more aura than adult Goku. And that's gonna trigger a lot of fucking people, but a lot of those people also never watched Dragon Ball in their life. So I don't think anybody understands how savage Goku used to be. Uh, Goku was beyond stand on business. We're talking full on army wiping, superpower fighting, full like insane Goku, who's just a tot, just a really strong tot. um, so although obviously, people are going to connect with the adult Goku more, but somebody like me who has watched from day one Dragon Ball all the way to Dragon Ball Super to each movie and seen Goku in every element, every aspect, including Daima, I still gotta give it to Tot Goku, man. Tot to adolescent Goku up until the end of Dragon Ball, it was just a different league. It was just a whole different league in the way that you perceive Goku as a character. And it is interesting to see, the the dichotomy of the two.
The story of Glorio vs. Goku is one of a strong, stoic loner doubting the scope of Goku's abilities, and I don't think that would have been as effective or believable if Goku were presented as an adult. There are moments in Dragon Ball Z where Toriyama tried to portray Goku as an adult as an unassuming, unremarkable guy. A great example of this can be seen in the lead up
True.
to his return in the Buu saga for the tournament. While training with King Kai, Goku is wearing weights around his extremities, thus nerfing his abilities, convincing the other Kai that he's not all that special before turning Super Saiyan and wrecking house. That's fine, but Toriyama needed to find ways, creative ways, to make Goku look weak that were divorced from how he looked. In other words, Toriyama needed to create ways to circumnavigate the visual presentation of his character. In this particular instance, adult buff Goku was working against what he was trying to achieve. As an adult,
Yep.
Goku looks like a tall, confident, and buff man, which makes creating scenes like this one with Glorio a lot more difficult. I mean, if Goku's a kid, and if you think about it, of course Glorio would discount a literal child that he literally looks down on constantly. Without words, visually, that perceived pecking order is communicated. However, when you scale up Goku, while it still looks incredible thanks to Trev's amazing artwork, that same story doesn't hit as strong. Instead of a kid being the one Glorio underestimated, suddenly it's a clearly bigger and stronger Super Saiyan.
Exactly what I was saying. Exactly what I was saying. There's nothing in the demon realm that is hanging tight with an Ultra Instinct Goku. Because if we just get regular adult Goku here, who is clearly, even on his base form, would have been plenty enough to handle Glorio without even blinking. So for something like that to happen, it would just take away any sort of stakes that any fight in this entire run could have. So, narratively, it's peak Toriyama again.
which just creates an entirely different vibe and dynamic. Next up, me. And what I'm drawing is perhaps the best example yet of a positive consequence of Goku being turned into a kid. As of the making of this video, Tamagami number 3 versus Goku is the best fight of the series in my book. And it is for one simple reason. It understands Goku. Despite my preference for adult kick-ass characters in my Dragon Ball, even I have to concede that this is a fight that simply would not have been better had Goku been aged up for it. And this is where we transition away from talking exclusively about the visuals and are forced to consider and contend with how those visuals impact or, in the case of this fight, inform the action that plays out. Similar to Goku's tussle with Glorio, a driving force behind Tamagami 3 versus Goku is a slow and sobering realization on behalf of everyone watching the fight that Goku is the fucking man. Heck, half the fight is Tamagami 3 realizing this for himself. Tamagami uses a weapon and Goku follows suit. Tamagami breaks his weapon and so Goku sheaths his Nyoibo out of respect for the challenge. There are countless moments of subtle storytelling coloring this entire fight that makes it one of the best Goku outings, but more than that, the choreography of this fight demands Goku be an infant.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about before, right? This is what I was talking about before when I said that whether you like it or not, Dragon Ball Daima is literally peak fucking Dragon Ball. From every aspect of the story, it has build up, it has draw, it has stakes, it has everything that you could have wanted. It's a perfectly managed series in homage to the creator himself. It's literally everything that we wanted previous to this series. I would even be open to the prospect of a Dragon Ball Super remake where they just take this art style and remake the whole goddamn thing. And I think people would actually show out to watch. I really do. I think people would be absolutely stoked to get this entire consistent art style throughout all of Dragon Ball Super, and it might even change people's minds on a lot of it. Well, some of it. You can't unfuck Zamasu. Jesus.
Back in early Dragon Ball, an expressed and intentional visual contrast was established between the likes of Goku and Krillin during their adventures. Within the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, both of these characters would face off against obnoxious, powerful, or confident individuals that all had one thing in common. They were huge. Look at the size of him! Leaning into the themes of older Bruce Lee films where the bigger, overconfident bully tried and failed to take on Bruce, Toriyama loved to leverage and draw his heroes as diminutive paragons of either virtue, talent, or innocence that stood in the face of enormous evils. In other words, the small stature of Goku in these fights helped to sell and communicate the story it was trying to tell. And while Tamagami 3 isn't evil in any respect, Goku and this fight more than definitely communicate a contrast in size between them. And interestingly, the entire fight sort of depends on that dynamic. While this Goku I'm drawing looks cool,
That's another thing that we can bring up is the attention to detail. Super Saiyan 2 is actually definitive in this fucking show because a lot of the times when they were using it in the previous series, you couldn't fucking tell. So,
when you look at the original, even here you can see that scale of Goku versus Tamagami's arm emphasizes their size difference, a contrast that is foundational to the DNA of this series. And so, while I cannot say adult Goku would make this fight better or worse, I can say that such a change would necessitate a completely different choreography and approach, which, given this is one of the best fights in the series, I think, would be nothing short of an enormous loss. With that said, here's my finished piece. I hope you like it, and with that, we are moving on once again to Trev.
Cool.
And this time, it's Vegeta in the club.
this shit was so funny, dude.
With scenes like
It was so weird, man. It was so weird to see Vegeta in a place like this because it's not something that, like, in your head, you're like, oh, yeah, you take Vegeta, shrink him down to a tot, and then you plop him in this, like, cyberpunky fucking, like, RGB'd out club. Is crazy.
Goku vs. Glorio, or the fight with Tamagami number 3, I think it's very easy to understand why the cast being children is used to the show's advantage. Those narrative beats and fights are fundamentally structured around their smaller size and utilize that to great effect. But by contrast, this is sort of a scene that exists mostly divorced from that concept. Yeah, you do have a bit where Kid Vegeta beats up a bunch of Demon World goons, which might not be quite as funny if they were adults, but I'm also not super convinced by that line of thinking either. A pissy adult Vegeta walking around an alien nightclub with this little tray full of food and getting into a fight is plenty funny on its own, particularly when you consider the savage introduction he had during the Saiyan saga. He was eating a person he killed, and yet for some reason in this show he has a hang-up about eating the revive bugs.
You know, that's good, but it's not classy.
It was so funny that it's this is one of my favorite moments because he's like, "Oh yeah, I have a changed palate now. I don't eat that pleb food anymore. The peasant food."
Anyway, what really drives this scene above all else is its atmosphere. The direction leans heavily on the environment, washing the characters in deep neon colors with sharp rim lighting on either side. All of that comes together to make this genuinely feel like a new place for the characters to explore. And in truth, this could easily apply to a substantial chunk of the show. There are tons of scenes, or entire episodes really, where much of the weight is carried by the direction, with the cast as chess pieces within those scenes. And there are clear examples of this. Basically, the entirety of episode 13 is also centered in its direction, and would not really lose anything by having the gang as adults. I mean, if you think about it, I don't think a few feet or inches in height is going to make much of a change in contrast with those giants. I mean, do you? And so looking at it that way, it does give me a bit of pause. Maybe the show could have foregone the de-aging process, and with a few tweaks to the script and action, we could consider.
I think what would have brought a lot of people into it would have been if they were to have taken, okay, so let's say when they go to the world, right, they're kids, they're whatever, you get the adventure aspect, you get the world building, and then on the second plane, there's three. I'm pretty sure there's three. Yeah, you have the first one, the second one, and then the third one where you have uh the Demon King and all them motherfuckers hanging out um that we saw in the recent episodes. I think on the second plane it would have been a good chance to say they found a way to turn themselves to adults, even if it was a temporary thing. Then you would have already settled your adventure aspect. You would have already settled the draw to the show and the world building. So then you could have started going heavier into the action side of things. I think that would have brought eyes to the show a bit more because in the later half, we're pretty much in all out war now. So it's not really a necessary, like, they don't have to be tots now, technically. Um, you could have transformed them back into adults temporarily and just had their power remain the same because you've already set up the plot. So then you can go from that, and then you can have a kind of a play on the story where the Demon King, he starts freaking out, or Goma, I think is what his name is. Goma starts freaking out that they're adults again, and then gets revealed to him that they still have the same power as before, and then he kind of gets overconfident and blah 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 blah. There would have been a lot of like plot building you could have done off of that, but obviously, hindsight's hindsight for a reason.
Conceivably have been good to go. So yeah, this is one where the kid's aesthetic wasn't necessary. And you need look no further than Trev's final result here. This could totally work.
I agree. I agree.
One of our longest lasting partners is back for 2025, and they are very literally putting the 5 into their brand new. Next up, the Mouse Man himself, AJ. And he will be redrawing what has
AJ.
become a fan favorite scene with none
Oh,
other
yeah.
than Vegeta.
Water Vegeta.
There we go, back at it again with some good old action set pieces. Only this time, I think I feel quite a bit different than the previous action shots we've discussed in this video. For Goku vs. Glorio, there was a narrative purpose reinforcing the need for Goku to look like a kid, with the action stemming from that exchange being informed by that very visual contrast. Additionally, with Goku vs. Tamagami 3, every second of the action depended on the size difference. Remove it and the fight just doesn't work at all. However, when I look at Vegeta vs. Tamagami number 2, I'm not so sure that same principle applies. The fight basically can be split into 3 sections. Section 1, Vegeta explodes out the gate with a convincing and strong performance. Section 2, thanks to Neva's power boost, the tides begin to shift in Tamagami 2's favor. Vegeta now is looking like he's being overwhelmed. And finally, section number 3. This is where Vegeta goes Super Saiyan 3 and proceeds to whoop ass until the fight is over. The crowd cheers only for us to realize that we need to patiently sit down and wait for this robot guy to tell his riddle. On its face, Vegeta vs. Tamagami 2 seems to share a lot in common with Goku vs. Tamagami 3. They both established that these two Saiyans should not be underestimated and ultimately were far more powerful than either Tamagami could offer. However, there is a critical difference between the two, and that's in how these fights are choreographed and play out. Ask yourself this: what part of this fight with Vegeta would be lost if he was an adult? I mean, if he was an adult, Section 1 would remain largely the same, right? Adult Vegeta, after all, is plenty overbearing, certainly enough to deliver a convincingly strong start. Section 2 would largely also be unaffected. After all, adult Vegeta has plenty of experience in getting his shit pushed in. It might even be more entertaining and
So I hear what you're saying, but if you don't remove the the comfort and natural ability that Vegeta has in his adult body, then you don't get the struggle that Vegeta has here, and he probably just holds his own in Super Saiyan 2, which removes even the chance of Super Saiyan 3 being possible. Because you now are in a situation where Vegeta is in a very comfortable Super Saiyan 2 state where he wouldn't even need to go 3. So putting him in a small body, which by the way, narratively at this point, he had not been able to stretch the lengths of his power like Goku has. He had been in a few fights, but neither one of those fights did he even go Super Saiyan. So that being said, one thing that you need to do is give Vegeta his moment to acclimate to his own body. So where Goku has had plenty of opportunity, Vegeta has not. So we're in a situation where Vegeta is put in a state of I guess I don't want to call it like desperation, but it's a state um of response, I'll say. It's a state of need to go to something higher in order to overcome your current objective, right? That's where that's where the necessity of having him as a kid comes into play, which is why I said like toward the end of being in the second quote unquote realm or plane of existence or whatever, that's when you could turn them back into adults because after that we just fall into absolute war. So at that point, them being adults is not like a whatever. It's a whatever thing. Um, yeah. So in this moment, if you removed Vegeta's need to have to adapt to being in a smaller body, then it takes away any sort of stakes this fight has that Vegeta needs to ascend to something greater in order to overcome this challenge while in such a small form. And yeah. So yeah, I do think it is a necessity here because otherwise Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta again doesn't happen, and you have to rely on Dragon Ball. What is the promotional show? Whatever the promotional show is that had Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta.
Effective narratively if Vegeta was an adult for this also, though I will concede that could be debatable. And then we finally have Section 3, which is an even easier argument to be made for adult Vegeta. What separates Vegeta's fight from Goku's is that none of the action demonstrated in episodes 11 and 12 was contingent on Vegeta's small frame, but rather simply aimed to make Vegeta feel like an overwhelming
It is. He literally says it. He says it in the show. Am I maybe no, I'm not dumb. I'm not dumb. I know this. I know this for a fact. Because at the point where Goku thought Vegeta got swallowed up, Vegeta's statement was literally, "I'm not used to this small body yet." That's what his response to Goku was. I knew I was remembering it correctly because that's like my whole basis on like why Vegeta needs to be a child here is because like Vegeta has no need to go Super Saiyan 3 if he's in a comfortable body at Super Saiyan 2. It's just not necessary. He could have easily maneuvered around the Tamagami. And the Tamagami, I guess you could have argued that okay, his power up gives the Tamagami some sort of advantage big enough to really make Vegeta have to push himself. But at the same time, I don't know. Because we see Vegeta close the gap with Goku before in a lower form. So it's not like, with that in mind, why would he need to ascend now? It's just weird.
domineering force upon the Tamagami. Unlike Goku vs. Tamagami 3, it never leveraged the size of Vegeta to inform the choreography in any capacity. And as much as I love Vegeta's Super Saiyan 3 design in kid form, it's remarkably easy to imagine how much cooler and more overwhelming this scene could have been with a full-grown man staring down the guardian of the Demon Realm's second ball. Thankfully,
Yeah, I do think, like, presentation wise, it is built on the fact that he is of small stature because it makes both the Kraken and it makes the Tamagami much more of an overwhelming threat in presentation than it would if he was an adult because then he'd just be fucking batting away the trident and whatever. It really wouldn't be a problem for him to combat this, and then he would even look larger in stature if he were to go Super Saiyan 3, and it would take the entire draw out of it. So yeah, I really do think he needs to be a Super Saiyan 2 or uh, a Super Saiyan 3 tot here.
though, we don't have to imagine because AJ has knocked this one out of the park.
The art
Next
is
up,
super
back
cool.
to Old Faithful with Trev, and we don't have to even switch scenes. That's right, another
Oh, he's
Super
going
Saiyan
for the
3 shot.
Galagun.
Don't judge me, adult Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta just looked awesome here. But fear not though, there is a point to this particular drawing. If it isn't clear, I think the previous shot from AJ works 100% as an adult, and the case could be made that it maybe even elevates it a bit. But that is not always the case necessarily. This shot of Kid Vegeta performing the Gallic Gun is a great example of one element that is unavoidable even in scenes where the action isn't explicitly choreographed around their size. And that element is proportions and negative space. When an anime is planning out its scenes, storyboard artists have to draft up compositions for not only what the characters are doing, but also how the camera frames them. This stage of production makes a huge difference in its own right, making the difference between a stunning, dynamic shot like this and a flat wide shot like this for the 50th time in a row. But it's not just about
Yeah.
doing cool tricks with perspective either. How any given shot is framed comes down largely to their character's proportions and features. The original Gallic Gun shot here works well because Vegeta's small, compact proportions play well with the wide shot. His head is big compared to the rest of his body, so his face is front and center, allowing the pose
True.
and ki to flow naturally with each other. It looks awesome, but the second Vegeta is aged up to his adult size, this framing begins to, well, fall apart kinda. His adult proportions mean the posing not only flows worse in this case, but also becomes the focal point rather than Vegeta and the attack itself. This exact issue is why other examples of Vegeta using the move in Super frames things differently. Instead, they typically split up the move into a close-up and then a long shot for the move being fired, and that
True.
works because it plays into Vegeta's adult proportions. Whereas here, while Trev's drawing is incredibly well done, no doubt, the very framing itself makes this whole thing just feel a little awkward with a lot of negative space. Our
I
eyes
agree.
don't exactly know where to look, and as a result, it's certainly less effective than the original, I'd say. And with that, we have one final redraw today, and it's my turn. We discussed a lot today in a pretty short amount of time. The benefits of the cast becoming kids narratively, as well as facilitating unique action and framing, are certainly clear positives. But we've also posited that, actually, yeah, there is quite a bit of the show that could, in theory, work perfectly fine with the crew as adults, with certain instances perhaps being
Sorta.
better served with adult characters in the first place. But I believe there's one element I haven't yet covered, one that's perhaps more important than the rest combined, and that is the very nature of the show itself. From the get-go, Dragon Ball Daima was created for one primary purpose: to be a special anniversary show celebrating the series' 40th anniversary. 40 years ago, or I suppose 41 years now, the very first chapter of Dragon Ball released. And from there
Facts.
sprung forth months upon years of masterfully crafted jokes, fights, and characters from the pen of Akira Toriyama for us all to enjoy. Due to the roaring success of Goku as an adult across the world, many of us, myself included, might be guilty of forgetting that for 4 years straight, Kid Goku was Dragon Ball. He was as iconic and inseparable as many of us view adult Goku today. So,
What did I say earlier? What did I say? What did I say? What did I say?
with that in mind, it seems only natural that for a big anniversary show, they would want to revisit those roots and take us on one more big adventure with the kid that started it all. I do have to admit, drawing this
Yeah, because, like, here's the thing. We are at the point of essentially no return for Dragon Ball. And it is kind of emotional. I mean, we're pretty much we're almost at the point to where we're going to I'm not going to say completely lose the adventure because we will still have adventurous moments, but you got to think about how high things are scaling for Dragon Ball. We are already at a crazy universal scale, and it's only going to get even more complex, even more insane from here. So, having a show like this to kind of ground you back down to earth and remind you of Dragon Ball's roots and where it comes from and what it is trying to portray to you as a viewer, it's something that is absolutely necessary. And taking advantage of that was a perfect way um, that Mark could have stated it because, like, you do take it for granted. You do. Because we're so used to the crazy jaw-dropping action scenes from an Ultra Instinct Goku. We got Super Saiyan God Vegeta versus Broly. It was insane. The choreography that was put into it, where it actually somewhat mattered. And then we had the moments where they were going so fast that they just threw choreography out the window and they just threw in a bunch of special effects to portray to you that we are on a different level. Taking something like this and presenting it to you as a fresh perspective and not only nostalgia but homage to what the series used to be. It's It's a proper play on nostalgia that I wish Super had. Super had a bunch of force-fed nostalgia. It's like a, hey guys, you remember this? That was Dragon Ball Super, start to finish. Hey, remember when Tien did this move? remember when remember when Vegeta did this? You know when he blew himself up? You remember that, guys? Guys, you remember that? That was Dragon Ball Super in a nutshell. This feels like a proper like homage to what things used to be, but we are continuing to move forward narratively. We're not being stuck in that nostalgia trip draw of the past. We're learning so much more about Dragon Ball as a universe. It's very, very cool to see. So I do think it's a very underappreciated show. And I really I really don't think you should be writing it off just because they look like kids. It's a really like surface level reason to just not watch the show.
Goku as an adult is really fun, if not cathartic. I love adult Goku the most, and since we don't get to see him with his Nyoibo very often, it's a cool sight to see him like
Facts.
this. But ultimately, that's not why this show exists, really. It exists to give longtime fans a nostalgic look at their once favorite character and send Goku and Co. on another OG Dragon Ball style adventure. In the end,
Facts.
I like how my drawing came out here, I might even prefer it, but one thing that's undeniable is that it just doesn't quite serve the same purpose the original was designed to fulfill. At
Yep.
the end of it all, I feel like doing these redraws with Trev and AJ has really helped inform my view of this topic more than I expected. Going in, I already knew that a lot of the action choreography revolved explicitly around the cast's smaller size, and that there are some scenes that would just outright be cooler if they weren't kids. But seeing the subtle but ever-present impacts the de-aging has on storyboarding, narrative, posing, and just about every facet of the show itself, it's helped me to appreciate what Dragon Ball Daima is doing. I certainly don't fault anyone for wishing Goku and Co were adults. Trust me, I do get
True.
it. For many of us, adult Goku is the Goku we know, and reverting back to OG Dragon Ball aesthetics just doesn't quite hit the same for us. But this show is an anniversary project, not a new direction. One meant to celebrate the series' roots and genuinely explore what can be done with these little kids' bodies now that we have all these fancy new moves and transformations and designs themselves from Akira Toriyama. And I think the show delivers on that remarkably well. For better or worse,
Facts.
I think Goku vs. Tamagami 3 is one of the best fights in all of modern Dragon Ball. It
He's
instantly
cooking.
soars up to the heights of Tournament of Power for me, or even the Broly movie, really. And again, important to point out, that fight necessarily would be completely different if the crew were adults. That same facet applies to so many fights, scenes, and narrative beats that I think an alternate reality where they were adults would be cool, but it also would entail necessarily a completely different show. And so with that, I'm going to get back to watching Dragon Ball Daima and look forward to what this show has in store for us.
Facts. Yeah, I really couldn't have said it better. I mean, you can't really disagree with Mark here. He has very good reasoning. At the end of the day, it's anime. It's going to be subjective. You know, some people are going to like things, some people won't. But there always is something that I will argue as an underlying objectivity to whether you can call a show good or bad. It might be a subjective art medium, but it's pretty easy to tell when it's really bad, and it's easy to tell when it's really good.
Dragon Ball has been around for almost half a century, and if nothing else, I think it has more than earned a victory lap. If you like the look of these
Facts.
drawings, all the artist socials are in the descriptions down below, including Aubrey, who was an incredible composite artist on this production. Without them, our final pieces wouldn't have looked nearly as authentic. I hope you all took something interesting away from this video. It was a blast to make, and I can't wait to see how Daima ends. But until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and thank you all so much for watching.
Yeah, shout out Totally Not Mark. Oh my god. It's my first time reacting to a video from his channel. Go give him a sub, give him a like. This was a phenomenal video, and it's not too old. All right, I've been getting some jabs, okay, because I've been reacting to videos that are like 2 years old. listen, we're new to the YouTube thing, man. I gotta get caught up, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, fucking W video. Make sure you go sub to him, give him a like. Sub to me, give me a like. All right, blow this up. If y'all want me to start putting out more Dragon Ball based videos, I need to know. And the way you do that is by getting the subs coming in, getting the likes going. All right, we're trying to grow the channel here, to bigger and better things. Okay. Um, yeah. That being said, I appreciate you all, and I will catch y'all in the next video. And my dog is currently having a dream. I think she's chasing bunnies. Hold on. We're gonna do something real quick. Real quick. Watch. Watch. There you go. There's your dog cameo for the day. I appreciate you all. Catch you on the next video. Later.